there is always an entry point where our life could be dedicated and will be worth to dedicate. There is always an entry point. Last example, we built this network of countries and we are cooperating a lot. We are examining everything together when building a project, etc. Last year we started, and in Burkina Faso there was the change, and I did the most to continue to have them on board, and we succeeded. And I was very happy because we have in connection with them.
The African economy is not built to function as an independent economy. The French-speaking Africans were built to respond to Paris, as if Paris is the main economy. Every other economy in the so-called France-Afrique are just working to support France. And the same is true of the English-speaking. These people are powerful. They have the structure very tightly spelled out. And this is the way it is.
Through the introduction of green technologies, and especially technologies enabling, they are called biorefinery, enabling the transformation, for instance, of the lignocellulosic biomasses, not to be burned, but to be transformed in valuable added value biochemicals, such as fibers, cellulose, hemicellulose, lignin, the basis biopolymerases to change, to support the innovation in the raw materials. My name is Lilia Infelise. I'm an economist, an industrial economist by background, graduated in Bologna University. But in my career, I had really an approach to multidisciplinarity, and especially I studied and practices also a lot in the field of cognitivism and learning strategies and connection between learning and changing, both individual change and learning, organizational and community. I'm by history a Calabrian origin, a southern region in Italy, with many problems of underdevelopment, criminality, and crimes. And so I decided to study economics with this major goal to support fragile regions, to identify exit strategy from underdevelopment. I worked for different centers of research, very often at their beginning, with their ambition. Then I changed and moved to the creation of my own institute, a non-profit laboratory, research laboratory, creating networks throughout different countries in Europe, but also worldwide. And what else to say about my history? I'm privileged, especially the multinational approach, the multidisciplinary approach, and the combination of theoretical studies and experimental field work, trying all the times to implement experiences and piloting actions which had a scale enabling feeding the theoretical part of my action, my research. I don't know whether I remember everything I said previously in Italian. And okay, then I funded ARTES, Applied Research into Training and Education Systems, and I created many new programs and projects trying to translate into reality my visions, thanks to a very large cooperation with universities, businesses, and any actor available to join me in these adventures. So I fundraised to translate my visions into reality. I always say I'm not a consultant, I am a strategist. Very difficult life, but with freedom.
Thank you so much for that. That is really quite interesting. You have a very big, large scope of experience, and also in your study. That is very important for us. We are always willing and ready to learn from different people who have a wealth of knowledge. Of course, we are talking about Africa today, and Africa is quite large as a reality and as a people, both in culture and politics and all of that. But they are all important for us. The first question I would like to ask you is, what is your approach to economy? And because this is going to be very important now as we engage in the conversation going further, please help me understand that.
As I told you, my approach is always multidisciplinary. Anyway, the basic approach is that of economics of innovation, which means that it is vital to identify the technological driver in order to valorize, exploit, unlock all the potentialities of a territory, of a community. I'm not a macro economist. I am an applied economist. So I'm persuaded that we must start and focus on the specific context of a region, of a territory, or if you like, also of a country, and identify which are the assets on which we can focus attention to start a regional innovation system, which means to dismantle the old technologies, the old habits, and start a learning systemic process of change, looking at the future. Concerning Africa and any country, 54 are obviously many and different, but what I think is that it is possible to jump into the future, which means to learn from the mistakes, big mistakes in the Occidental world, such as the chaotic urbanization, the pollution, the linear economy, and learn from the most advanced outcomes, discovery of science, and especially the wide biotechnology, which is a great of science and technology fields, and start any investment possible in the transition toward a model of circular bioeconomy, which means adopt all economic and technological strategies which allow to valorize the available resources, natural resources, and transform through these technologies, this is possible, into biomaterials, so avoiding all the severe problems originated by the linear economy, the oil economy, etc. Obviously, depends also on the resources, because in case, for instance, the country is very rich in petrol, they will have a specific strategy, but it is absolutely important to jump into the future and really profit of the discovery of the science. I think that science today allow us to preserve environment, prevent from the severe danger from climate change, and create a bioeconomy system which will allow to grow fast and to deliver transformed products which are appealing for the growing market, both inside and outside. Obviously, exports has to be valorized as much as possible, transforming products and entering in the proper markets, emerging markets, sometimes niche markets, some other times large scales, depend on the country, but also meets the local needs and the intra-regional African import-export dynamics. You know that less than 10% of the import-export is inside in Africa, while in Europe is almost 63%, which means that actually is very important for Africa continent. And I believe in the Pan-African vision to develop, to exploit the intra-regional market. But we are towards this strategy. Very often the Occidental world try to protect this advancement in the science for the support of the circular bioeconomy. But I'm building a network in Africa. We have created a network of 10 countries, African countries with European countries, in order to share know-how, assess problems together, because also Europe has a relevant problem today. We are at the starting point in this decade, and develop solutions which will be different and specific of the context, both in Europe and in Africa, depending on the solution. I believe that is very relevant to work in the specific country and region. And in the meantime, I believe that it's extremely important to select those value chains which could become drivers, such as coffee or fruits and vegetables, depends, and throw out this selection of value chain, establish cooperation in a win-win and approach with the European countries and companies, which means a fruitful cooperation both for the European companies and the African companies. We could have the cost, the production cost, which will be competitive if we are able to establish a close cooperation and, for instance, install transformation in Africa instead of importing commodities to Europe and exporting back transformed products. But for this, we need to experiment solution and show that it's feasible. For this, we need resources to invest in laboratory technologies. Otherwise, developing competencies of teams of individuals in Africa will create severe risks that these precious resources, the people in the working age, will be then emigrating in favor of the Occidental world, and we will have a brain drain process, which is a danger for Africa. In the near future, I showed you a graphic. We cannot now dedicate time to this. There will be a gap in Europe of due to demographic trends of working force, and there will be an important growth and an important capital of young people who must be trained, educated, but they must remain in some way in their countries, obviously, in international teams. So experiencing, embracing the international atmosphere through exchange of students, exchange of researchers, exchange of business leaders, but remaining in their country.
Thank you so much for that. Now, I've got a question for you. The question has to do with your interest. You said before that you care about the fragile region, the economic activity in those areas, which by that I understand that you mean the underdevelopment in those regions, and you are working to help in those areas to sort of help them to level up at the end of the day. But why are you doing that? Why are you lay emphasis on the underdeveloped region? What is motivating you in those areas?
I must say that I'm not how to say, in a big, powerful foundation, or I'm not in the power to influence big decisions such as those taken at the worldwide level. So my intention is to demonstrate, to create demonstrators what I'm doing. I experimented some piloting actions, for instance, in the south of Burundi, where I demonstrated how it's possible to help the small businesses, the community around a natural forest, to identify their potential and accompany them to plan strategies, economic strategies, business strategies, in order to start a process of development. More recently, and we worked for this in the last at least 4 or 5 years, we created the network called Africa Europe Alliance, ARCA for Food, which is a network of research and a multi-stakeholder network in 10 countries in Africa, and we are sharing understanding of the key problems coming from the exportation of commodities and weaknesses of value chains. And we have created cooperation network with industry, especially Italian industries, but not only in Italy, also in Turkey, in Belgium, in Holland. And we are writing together programs to start a joint assessment of the key problems in these value chains and ways to solve the conflict of interest in the agreements for commerce, for trade with Europe. I must say that unfortunately we have written this program in the last 2 or 3 years and we are fundraising, but at present we have not yet obtained the necessary funds. But we are, confident that in the near future we will receive the financial resources to implement this program. And especially in Italy, there is a strong commitment from the agri-food cluster, which includes some of the most relevant multinational companies in the agri-food value chain. And we hope that this program, by June, we should know something about this, will be financed and to implement this program. This is why we met in Venice to discuss and to join a force. I am also working a lot with all my partners to advocate our vision. So I will be in Brussels next beginning of June, because there are resources available, such as the 150 billion euro committed and agreed in the last summit, African Union, European Union, to dedicate to this process of fair cooperation and restructuring of the international trade. And there are ways to persuade the decision makers to trust our approach, which is based not on receiving solution, but building together analysis and identifying solutions. This is what I've done, especially in this field of supporting a new model of cooperation between Africa and the EU. I'm also working in other fields, recently, especially in the field of developing biorefinery technologies, which are technologies of relevance for this strategy. But at the moment, the European financing resources are mainly dedicated to Europe only. But anyway, this advocacy action is relevant. By 23rd of May, we are going to prepare also a proposal for the a specific foundation to ask support for this network of science and businesses based in Africa and in Europe. And I repeat, especially in Italy, we are the initiators as Italians of this approach and this network.
Thank you for that. Now, when you were talking before, you made mention of Africa not repeating the same mistakes by the Western, or if we like, we might say, the Euro-Western economy.
Yeah.
Right. What mistake are you referring to?
There are two examples. The first is urbanization. You know that is very well known, the fact that in Africa there is an important, huge and fast urbanization model. And we see big metropoles with a lot of problems, with the marginalized people living in the surrounding of the central part, with problem of nutrition, many different problems, etc. And the so-called innovative approach says we must invest more resources, financial resources from the United Nations, World Bank, multilateral funds, to study these problems and to afford this problem, and we must dedicate a little bit less eventually to the financing of agriculture. There is a debate, there are conflicts between scientists on this topic. In some way, this statement is correct. We must dedicate not only resources to increase, but also not only to increase the agricultural productivity, introducing innovation, etc., but we must also address this problem of how the distribution of the production happen, which is the dominant power of the distributor network, etc. What I'm saying is that we need also to reflect on the needs of not repeating the Occidental approach of strong divide between rural development and cities. Cities is advancement, city is the concentration of the most educated people. Cities are the leader of innovation. This is by centuries the European history. And we have a lot of problem with precious natural environment, losing population, and we don't know how to do. There are many problems in Europe concerning the rural deprivation of the potentiality. My approach is this: the circular bioeconomy model allows to transform the rural environment through the introduction of green technologies, and especially technologies enabling, they are called biorefinery, enabling the transformation, for instance, of the lignocellulosic biomasses, not to be burned, but to be transformed in valuable added value biochemicals, such as fibers, cellulose, hemicellulose, lignin, the basis biopolymers to change, to support the innovation in the raw materials. If agriculture become the mine of the future, not the petrol, but the new biomasses, and we have the technologies to transform them, not completely, but in partly substituting the linear economy, the rural areas will be able both to become attractive of research infrastructure, of not polluting, zero waste biorefineries, especially small and modular, in order not to have a negative impact on the environment. And they could have both the new industrial development, which was impossible in rural areas, in precious rural areas, and in the meantime, continue their role of attracting tourism, ecotourism, etc. Then they will become more and more attractive of precious population, young people, educated people, and the connection between towns, cities, urban and rural will be changed. This is something on which we must elaborate. We shouldn't accept the Occidental world. Urbanization and strong divide with the rural development. The model could be different. Obviously, we need new models for logistics. We need to exploit the technology of drones, not for war, but for civil uses. And we could concentrate in some important technological and industrial core, necessarily in the urban situation, the biomaterials extracted by the rural areas. I don't know, because this is difficult to explain. It seems to be a dream, but there are scientific basis for this. We are debating about this, and this is one example. Then the new model of relation between urban and rural development, which is linked with the application of the advancement in the science and technology of biorefinery. The other example concerning the difference between Occidental world and the African situation. When I went to this forestal area, environment, which is amazing, and you know, only in Burundi there are 14 natural reserves, but the African continent is really rich of natural environment, which are the resources for the survival of the humanity in our planet. But I found around the surrounding of this natural reserve a lot of plastic. And I found that, for instance, the small restaurant, the small hotels had everything in plastic. They removed everything of their traditional uses. So in a natural environment with also thermal bath, we found, for instance, a small business producing water bottle in plastic. And this destroyed the value of the territory, because I don't like to go in a place where there is a natural reserve with chimpanzee, with occasion for ecotourism, and everything is plastic. The seat, the chair, the table, everything is plastic. And they don't use the ancient tradition, for instance, the capacity to craft wood, to craft potteries. So this was something I did, and you see some videos, and I would like, in case while you will transmit my speech, if you could show in the background without voice the video we published of this experience, because it's speaking clearly about this vision. So it's important to remove plastics. But this happened in Europe. For instance, in the south of Italy, this happened in the same way. The poor countries use plastic because it's not expensive. But we must ensure that the huge capital invested by the multilateral funds are used to remove this and finance small companies, micro companies, working, crafting their natural resources. And in fact, we created a center in the surrounding of this place. I do not see you anymore. Okay. Because I'm passionate, I speak, and maybe you disappear and speaking to the computer. Anyway, in concrete, we created a center to offer coffee with in a very elegant, natural environment, with clothes dressed using the cotton of the country, the fabric of the country, the wood of the country, the pottery of the country. And this is richness, while importing and using plastics impoverish the people, but make rich the importers, big multinational maybe, that import things. Another example is in the field of construction, building, and installation for the air conditioning, etc. Very often we have importers of products from outside the countries. They are installed. Often in the tourism sector, they are rich people, African people, maybe coming back from their immigration. They spend a lot of money. And these are low quality, very low quality. Very often the people are not, local people are not trained for the maintenance. So after 2 years, the hotel has everything broken and in a low quality level. And they don't know, they must throw away and buy again. So with the University of Bologna, we agreed to create a center of research and services, transferring know-how in the construction and technology for construction and material for construction, in order to allow the country to give some guidelines, because in this growing economy, without any rules, any guidelines, which has to be in the hand of the country, of the people, African people, the exporter of services and product will create only pollution without developing the capacity to produce in the country, to maintain things, etc. What I say is that is in this complex problem, we must always find in a very practical manner the entrance point, what helps us to enter and indirectly generate the changes. So, for instance, a law which oblige to not to use plastics, but to exploit local resources, sustainable, not polluting, etc., will help this direction, but we need money. We need that the financing resources coming from big programs such as the European program now, but also World Bank and African Bank are directed towards this strategy. For instance, giving support for business creation, which use the local resources, and supporting the creation of this center of competencies in cooperation with universities, in cooperation with the local, but also European universities. So it's very relevant to have an attention to the direction of the cooperation. And again, my key point is we must create fair cooperation between scientists in Africa and abroad, which share a vision. And the vision is in any way defined in your strategy for 2063. The goals are set. The problem is the pathway towards. Obviously, I must mention corruption everywhere, also in Africa, which not, how to say, in Africa and abroad, with the collusion between big powers, which don't want this kind of strategy. And they create obstacles when they realize that you are going towards this strategy and that you have a strategy which can give result also in the short term and which needs less money eventually than other big groups which are distributing resources. Now I'm approaching a very delicate.
Talking of delicate, I think every part of it is actually, but of course we also need to face it. It's important that we talk about that. Of course, there is a question I would like to ask you relating to the structure of even the African situation that you were referring to, but maybe we'll leave that, we'll come back to that later. Now, looking at the African economy, or a larger part of it, we can actually say the whole of it because they are basically set up the same way by the same people. You know that the African economy is set up in line with the colonialist agenda in Africa. You are aware of that, right? Now, how do you intend to change that, thereby working against the original European plan? And you want to use European money because you talked of about 1 billion euro that is amassed by the European Union for this project. How do you intend to take their money and work against their agenda? Help me understand that.
Okay, I told you that I'm in some way defining myself as a strategist. So I think that we cannot be, I would say, simplistic. We are living in this situation of power, which in a very sudden way directs things instead. So I think that it's really important to create this innovative network of people, African people and European people like me and others, sharing vision and trying to obtain through different strategies resources everywhere they are coming. From everywhere they are coming. So we cannot say we don't use the European or the World Bank or the new World Bank created by the BRICS. No, it's the reality that Africa is in this center very important because it's a mine of young precious resources, of rare materials for the green economy, etc. So there will be power, unfortunately, creating conflict in the continent. There will be, and this is unfortunately a reality. And I studied deeply how is going the use of this 150 billion euro committed at the summit. And I realized immediately that there are some European countries, I cannot say the name, who had already agreement with countries in Africa To support the investments in critical infrastructure. They are critical. The country industry has the power. It's difficult for an African country to say no. It's important to try to identify ways to direct the investment in the correct direction, which has the vision. The correct direction is the vision, the global vision, which is there. But this needs a leadership, a federative leadership, which is not easy to find. And here we go in a territory where it's not easy to discuss. For instance, Europe privilege saying that they will support investment if the country agree and respect democracy principles. Sometimes happened that they stopped giving suddenly resources, blocking funds because of direction they didn't agree with. Okay, I think that one solution should be to say, okay, these are the agreements, the funds will be spent, committed there, and the agreement in writing should establish that the analysis is done by both sides together. And they could also identify teams, such as I hope our teams will work together. We are University of Venice, University of Bologna. We are very well reputed and we share visions. And then there should be an autonomy of the monitoring board. I know that everything is difficult because anytime there are ways to divert, to be corrupted. I know that also throughout the diaspora, there are mechanisms, but this is only a problem of growing. But a way to contrast some of these approaches is to establish that the assessment of the problem has to be done together, and the evaluation of the valorization and the impact has to be done in order to the agreement to be fair. Cannot be done only by bilateral agreement. The funds committed by Europe are funds of all European countries, cannot be managed by one country because it has the power to influence and eventually to corrupt. And we see that, for instance, there are resources dedicated to democratization processes. The country should be autonomous in this process. I refer, for instance, to Burkina Faso. We must see what is going on. Niger. The problem is that also there are influences from different, geopolitical groups. How to ensure that the country will be able to gain freedom through a strategy which use resources, but at the same time direct these resources with a multilateral approach, not giving trust only to one group, one geopolitical group. It's very difficult. The other position is that of Dambisa Moyo, who says no funds from Occidental world. You can define a strategy only using raw resources. The immigrants and the diaspora financial support is bigger than the cooperation funds. I think that this is partly true. I think that what is important is the capacity of a country in Africa to express a leadership which is able to ensure an autonomy strategy with a multilateral approach to resources everywhere, but with a clear strategy. It's not easy because this means to have that Africa will have a very strong leadership, and you know that in the 60s and 70s more than 7 leaders were killed because what to say is not easy, and I trust a lot that the entry point is to create these communities of young leaders, well-trained, aware, both of science aspect and geopolitical aspect, with a very strong entrepreneurial approach. This is why in Washington, D.C., I coordinated a seminar exactly on this topic. Change is always positive change, not negative change. It's always something not global, comes from some strategy. The history will help.
Are you sure people are really ready to learn from the history? Because you said a while ago that it is in the 60s, for example, more than 7 African leaders were killed. Of course, we understand that these were killed to appease the Euro-Western idea of the type of Africa they want. They have all these more than 150 billion euro that is put aside for that agenda. They are not making a mistake. And now, few individuals like you are standing against those organizations. I'm still sort of wondering how you are going to be able to stand against them. What is the approach to walk away from there, from that line? Because the narrative haven't really changed. And anyway, let me put it like this. You see, it is set up of African development, particularly the one that followed the colonialism. What you are seeing in Africa is a direct replicant of how it was during colonialism, in that the African development structure was not based on the people. For this reason, they didn't care about the rural development. They cared about city center, which served as a collation of resources that needed to go away from the people. You see, in Italy, you and I are living in Italy. You see, the way the Italian or the European society is built is the way the traditional African society is built too. By that I mean, it's built around the people. It's not built away from the people. But the African society, typical society, are built away from the people, so that the people are not at the center of the structure. And this is because the structure was not made for the people. It was made by the same people who believe that Africa is a satellite. Now, by satellite, I mean the African economy is not built to function as an independent economy. The French-speaking Africans were built to respond to Paris, as if Paris is the main economy. Every other economy in the so-called France, Afrique, are just working to support France. And the same is true of the English-speaking. These people are powerful. They have the structure very tightly spelled out. And this is the way it is. So that, for example, when you were talking of plastics, I don't want it to appear as maybe we are accusing the local people of using plastic. Because first of all, they don't even have resources to develop this plastic. These plastics come to them through a network of organizations, like, for example, this 150 billion euro that is earmarked for development in Africa. And one thing that is really very funny about this is that this money always need to pass through European organization. And the working of this money is always controlled because they are giving out this money for a specific project which need to be approved, which means that that money is working according to the plan. If that is the case, it means the results that we are getting in Africa is according to the plan. I don't know if that is sort of difficult to understand. What do you think of that?
Okay, let me say that I was in some way ready to answer question, not to enter your analysis, because I need to understand very well what you are saying. What I understand from what you are saying is that there is a plan and is an Occidental, let's say European, but I think also other European has an important role. I think that I anticipated I'm not a powerful person. I am like a facilitator, and I am just beside the subject, the author, who are the African. I can be, how to say, an European interlocutor. I can put at the availability of this network my capacities, but I cannot change the decision. And what I'm saying is again that without the African leadership, you will never solve the problem, because you are big. You are, let me say, I often think about women. Women are 51% of the population in the world, but they are marginalized in reality. No? Why? Because the 49% are bad people, or also because the 51 have many, many problems. And very often they betray their cause. What do you think?
Well, it's good that sometimes the question can also be thrown back to me.
I think you speak and I make questions.
Yeah,
So
I think,
I
yeah,
say
please go.
another last thing. When I worked for this pilot work in Burundi to show in this forest, I showed the way. I spent so much time, 2 years, and I persuaded the people. They were willing to go to what I was doing, creating a network of localities, etc., etc. The money was there. There were 30 million and billion, no, 30 million, no, sorry, 30,000, 30 million of dollars. Okay, they at the end decided that I had not to continue. They stopped. I wasted all my time. People are asking to support, but I cannot go there because they decided not to support. And also my interlocutor, the manager in World Bank, was removed. This
That
is
is,
a lot. I couldn't say a lot because I would like to continue to work in Africa. But you know that also in the strategy for an exit strategy, in all the David against Goliath, you need to find strategies. You cannot say, they are bad people and we cannot do anything. I know Calabria, where there is mafia. I know it's difficult. What to do? I choose to enjoy my life. That's all, because I cannot do anything.
no, that is not a good approach. We need to continue to face it. And of course, yeah, there
And
are,
not let them kill me.
but be specific. Why did they stop the project that you were working with, $30 million? What crime did you commit?
There was a program, well written, assessed, everything was perfect. And they are very clever in managing program without making a revolution.
Do you think that is even fair approach in that? Okay, now, I'm not particularly in favor of NGO or Western NGO in Africa, and this is why. In 2010, I wrote a book that I titled "On the Development in Africa, My Hands Are Clean." Of course, the thesis of the book was to tell the African people that we have a huge responsibility in what is happening, what have happened, and what is going to happen. Nobody is coming to develop Africa. It's never going to happen. I see that you were referring to Diaspora. Yeah, I read that book. The idea is that like we are seeing the example that you gave of 150 billion euro be a month for Africa. If we do a final analysis, we will see that the money returned back to Europe. It didn't really go to Africa. That is the accurate picture. Yeah. But of course, within the geopolitical arithmetic, it appears that the money have been given to Africa. It is a lie. Another thing also along with in that narrative is that for over 400 years, the relationship between Europe and Africa is based on help. Europe is always helping Africa for over 400 years. This too is a lie. Mm-hmm. So it's a very complex discussion sometimes, but I think we need to face it. We need to think about it. We need to talk about it. Because it doesn't really depend on Europe. For Africa to develop, it doesn't depend on Europe. It depends on Africa. Because it requires a lot of effort, a lot of sacrifices.
No, you will not be able alone, even if you are a big continent. So, in some way, I believe in the idea that some minorities could create innovative networks throughout the continents and play their own role, but in cooperation. You will never be able to be as a continent to go towards some direction positive. Obviously, the major responsible for each continent is in the people of the continent, but it's very relevant that you have people sharing your vision, supporting you. You were mentioning ONG. For instance, I am also doubtful about many of their action, especially big ONG. We cannot speak for 2 days, but they are very concrete example. Many years ago, 30 years ago, I presented a program for migration. Was based on using all the Italian embassies and Chamber of Commerce to start a awareness raising program toward young people anywhere in Africa, explaining what was going on, etc., and creating a database to identify the competencies available in Italy, in SMEs, etc. So I promote a model to support a fair cooperation, which should help assess the capacity of people in Africa, develop their capacity, and eventually foster both migration, regular migration, and creation of businesses in Africa. I tried several times. This project was not financed, and we were also powerful because there was all the Chamber of Commerce, the association in Italy. But 30 years ago, nobody, also unions, were interested about the problem of illegal immigration. So what I did, thanks to the experience of the problem, because I started dealing with Africa because I met a person, an African political refugee in Italy, an economist, a valuable person. You may also discuss with him. And then I helped 25, together with this person, students to come in a regular way. So what we could do is very often small exemplary experiences. Obviously, we must try more, and then trying to create more powerful network. I did for 5 years a very strong political campaign, trying to be elected at the European Parliament. But when the parties looked at my point of view, they were not in favor. I didn't succeed. because it's very difficult to be fair, to be clear, and to try to introduce radical new approaches. Colonialism, you know what is going on in the planet, the war in Ukraine and the genocide in Gaza. The reality of the world is this. So we can try to dedicate our short time of our life to build as much as possible action for change, advocacy. I cannot say more. I cannot do more.
Thank you for that. No, I believe that is a good approach. In fact, humanity have always collaborated. In A-Classes Media, for example, we try to promote the idea a lot of collaboration. Of course, there is a difference between a collaboration where you bring your idea, I bring my idea, we work together. You define your interest, I define my interest. Then we come to a compromise, we work together, knowing what is happening. Of course, that is different from what is actually the narrative between Europe and Africa. Now, in terms of a collaboration, how would you define a proper way to approach it?
Terms collaboration is very general. What I'm saying is that it's important to, at any level, this, which means also at a top level in the big decision makers bodies, is to identify a model of exchanging views. What I'm saying, and also I'm doing, is in each project I introduce a multi-actor approach. And I say that it's not enough to create table for dialogue, but we use a statistical approach where we categorize the various stakeholders, we make huge number of interviews, and we schedule the 15 variables. The cooperation has to be structured. To change, this is an important message I would at the end deliver, because if we speak a lot, maybe then people will be bored listening and will lose the messages. The first message is to create federative leadership, well-trained, multi-continental, in this case Europe and Africa, which share vision, share competencies, and work together to analyze, assess problems, and solve both European and African, never saying that the problem is only in Africa. The second message is we need structured methodology, science-based methodology, to implement a change learning pathway. There are techniques, there are instruments. Otherwise, we just speak, and we don't really achieve results. These are the two messages. Maybe I gave some other key messages, but I will never say that the people in Africa are guilty because they use plastic. No, I'm not simplistic. I'm not simplistic at all. I think that we must stay together with a deep sense of respect, reciprocity of respect, not only white for black, but also black for white, because there are also some risk when you are too fair to be considered in a sort of weak person, that there is always an entry point where our life could be dedicated and will be worth to dedicate. There is always an entry point. Last example, we built this network of countries and we are cooperating a lot. We are examining everything together when building a project, etc. Last year we started, and in Burkina Faso there was the change. And I did the most to continue to have them on board. And we succeeded. And I was very happy because we have in connection with them. I asked people of the diaspora in Burkina Faso living in Italy, give me a chance to be, to not to, they promised, but they didn't. So the evil is in every person, everywhere. We should try to keep with our ideal and continue without a simplistic approach, but respecting our dignity. And if we are committing to a just cause, we must stay with.
These things really, they are very complicated, no? And like I said to you in the beginning, we take time to explain them. They are not self-explanatory. When we talk about development, we also need to clarify exactly what it means. And when we talk about collaboration or cooperation, we also need to explain for the people to understand, because the things are not as simple as they appear. Like I was just telling you, there is this singular narrative about the Euro-African relationship. For many people, it is just simple. That is just what it is. But we need to take time to explain these things. Like, for example, you talk of over 150 billion euro that is out there for project. Where does this money go? How does it work? These are not self-explanatory. That is why it takes a lot of time to explain them. And sometimes we need to repeat ourselves so that people can understand it, because everybody is not a professor. By making an effort to sort of break it down again and again, the people might come to understand, because we are speaking to the people, not just the high-class academia. That is why it might sound like a little bit repetitive.
I agree. Yes, the listening to is very important in the cooperation. To really think that you are not. You need to the cultural diversity, we could say. We need really to listen, but not only the words, but also to stay with people, to live there, and to share the deeply understanding. Because one other element I defend in the small, I could say, the work I do, even if I work 18 hours a day, is to really try the most to develop a process which deals not only with declaratory teaching, but the implicit knowledge. And the way to, and there is this model in my works, the way to foster real change, the change you are aspiring, is clear from what you say, is to put in place a dynamic which is not only wording, teaching or saying like we are doing, but also letting people experience. For instance, in Africa, before gaining the trust of the population, the communities, I spent years and years, because without experimenting in the time, but also with a symbolic model, again, there is a methodology to help fragile teams with the history of conflict, also internal, ethnic or not ethnic, anyway, conflict, to rebuild an aspiration of a will for positive change. You need to use some techniques also where things happens. How to persuade, for instance, a team of the diaspora building an anonymous business in Luxembourg, trying to earn some money of this flow of money going from Europe and back, etc. Just through a true experience with them, not only saying what they very well know. They are trying to earn money.
Well, that is quite interesting. It's like, it's not simple. That is the truth. It's not simple. Because if you need the money, you are going to play according to the rules of the money. Because the person who is giving the money is not doing charity. Charity, sometimes we need to even understand what is meant by that. Nobody is Father Christmas anywhere. They are giving the money because they need a certain project to be done for a certain objective. Now, let me put a question to you like this. Do you think if an institution in Nigeria, in Burundi, or in Ivory Coast apply for that money, for that 150 billion euro for their development, that money, a part of it will be given to them?
I tell you that increasingly they are called dedicated to subjects in Africa. Because obviously, thinking like you, they said, okay, but we need also to give the power to present projects to the beneficiaries. But anyway, they select those African subjects which in some way accept the rules. So a way to change deeper this mechanism is that when at the African summit they take decision, they say that or also for the Italian Piano Mattei, they should say, leave us the opportunity to present a network, an innovative network with their principle, their rule, and leave them, freedom to make proposal and give the money to this proposal, obviously in dialogue, vice versa then. We are not designing in Italy or in Europe, they are designing and cooperating with this. Our network is, in fact, I'm defending the fact that our network will have this chance. I'm trying hard not to present project for all the details they ask, etc., but give us a multi-funds program and let us present the program we are willing to implement, as we did, we submitted, we don't know whether we'll be financed. And all the members, the majority are Africans. And the curricula, everything is transparent. This doesn't mean that when we will start with money, we'll not have problems. Maybe it will emerge some problem, but there are mechanisms. In this case, complexity is simplified. Ask that at least a percentage, 50% of the money to be spent in Africa is committed to programs presented by African networks accredited through their presentation, not the traditional NG or think tanks. For instance, I was in Washington. There was the meeting of the African think tanks, and they were all white. And there is a strange mechanism which allowed to be recognized as an African think tank if the think tank has implemented projects for the government, at least in the last 10 years, etc. How you can find revolutionary people among this kind of network which are accredited just because they had the power from their governments?
That is what we are talking about. It's not simple, but that is an aberration, no?
An aberration of the false innovation and the false fairness. But we have a way to find, and I simplify. Study our network. You will, in case we are financing, you will participate, and we will invite you to. And I have a huge number of video recording of our meetings. Okay.
Yeah, that is
obviously
it.
There should be problem, but it's something good. By 23rd, I will try to present our network to have a small fund, because sometimes they allow, but they give you a very limited amount of money. You cannot do anything of what they ask. They ask a lot, giving the less.
All right.
Because the strategy, unfortunately, is the end of the.
But anyway, you are a strategist. How is that supposed to work if they ask a lot and they give you a less amount of money? Anyway, could you, as we go to a conclusion of the conversation, could you explain more about your project, what you're doing with your organization?
About my I tell you that for many years, from 1991, I designed a revolutionary project, especially I was not dealing with Africa. I started in 2007, but only a minority of my project were financed, but I was lucky. Was not easy. If you visit my site, you will see all the project implemented. They are 3% of the project, and I worked a lot without being paid to. But at the end, I implemented this project, which show a way to change the positive change. In the last years, when I started with Africa, I had only financed one small project. All was voluntary work. And I'm still doing the most to make a jump into the future. And I don't accept the benevolent approach. I always say we need big programs. Otherwise, we don't make change. For instance, I designed a project for the whole Tanganyika Basin. It's an excellent program. I designed the same for Italy. But they told me, oh, this is not a project which could be implemented because Africa is still at the problem of eating every day. So I need that. The last thing, I took part I participated to the summit Africa-EU 2017, thanks to an African person, because I was not allowed otherwise from the Italian. And I have, and I had, and still have, relation at top level with every top level. I tried, I defended causes with them, but always I confronted a very strong barrier. It's very, very difficult. It's very difficult.
I have a question for you. How do you gather your data to be able to come to a conclusion of the type of project you want to embark on in Africa? Tell me about that.
Yeah, but I asked the partner in Africa to identify, to describe the problems. Everything is built from the beginning with them. It's not my project. Yes, I have a vision, I shared with them, I have some know-how on how to get to, but the project we are defending now is based on 5 value chain. And the people from Africa, the research centers, both studied and prepared their assessment of the key problem and also the key solution they expect. And they mobilized all the actors. I said, as to be an analysis shared with the stakeholders. But I give a methodology. I don't collect data alone. And the in-field work to collect data, and the methodology to listen and let the ground speaking, and not the towers, the golden towers or ivory towers, to say. Also in Africa, we need, and if you see one of my video, you see that I speak with people from the community, because the know-how comes from listening to all people in all territories. The first time I went, I said, I don't want to meet only the president, the minister. I want to meet everybody, also the people. There should be a methodology for listening to. Before dedicating to Africa, I was the leader of the first biggest program to develop 11 task forces in 11 Eastern European countries. So Poland, Bulgaria. I designed the project and I had to help these task forces, 11 people in 11 countries, to assess their problems for the reform of labor market and education in order to reform and access Europe as members. So I'm experienced in working with conflicts, difficulties, and in general, I gave them a methodology and help them to collect data from the field. Obviously, we study a lot, all the publication, all the reports, the work of in fact, in our project, there is a file called background knowledge. I read a lot of documents. The due diligence is very important when you address a problem. You need really to be able, from the dark field, to identify the knowledge you need to help lead, facilitate a community of actors to design the project.
How do you sell this project to a European financier, those who put their money? What do you tell them that make them give you money to finance those projects?
But unfortunately, I cannot say anything except to fill in a very complex formula. Then I try to speak with the actors, etc. In the European processes, the financing is given through very structured and bureaucratical approaches. This is why I spoke with my network and they said, this is not the only way, maybe it's the most difficult. We should try to obtain a trust fund. There are instruments, and I'm fighting to obtain a framework program. I don't know whether feasible, and I'm ready to ask for these sources everywhere, so not only to Europe. And also the African partners are very strong, and they could also access funds from other sources. Burkina Faso has some new channels. South Africa has some channels. I know all the different channels, and also Africans are very powerful in this.
Thank you for that. So what would be your final thought here to conclude the conversation? Please go ahead and do that. And also tell people how to connect with you.
My proposal is obviously to the people. To reach me, you have the email and you have the site, the website. You can share this, especially the email, because this is the best way to reach me and to give me the freedom to answer at the time I can, as I'm really always busy trying to obtain the realization of the vision. And this to reach me, so email is the best. And to know me more, the LinkedIn articles. Obviously, there is also there are books. There is in LinkedIn, not completely updated, not with everything. There are many other actions I didn't tell you about. They can anyway find me and see what I do. Also, the video I gave you. And my last intervention is in Italian. If you like, I can transform in English. This is a good way to understand and also to reach me.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you again for the time. It has been a pleasure talking with you.
You are welcome. And it was a pleasure also for me to meet you and to listen to you.
Thank you.
I wish you all the best for your continent, for your work.
Thank you. And the same to you. you.